Afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
All right, Kim, do you want me to, um, were you able to grab the agenda offline, or do you want me to
Yep, I have it.
post it okay, perfect.
Welcome, everyone. Um, we'll begin our meeting by just approving the March minutes. If I can get a motion to approve.
Can I just check, Tara, were those attached to this invitation for today's meeting, or were those emailed separately?
They're always posted on the website.
Oh, that's right. In the Teams chat.
I don't know if I moved them over to Teams, but yes, there is a
Gotcha.
Teams. Um,
Thank you. I'll get them off the website.
yep,
Thank you.
I can put the link in there too.
If I can just get a motion to approve the March minutes.
And it can be any council member.
I can put in a motion. This is Jimna.
Thank you, Jimna. I really appreciate that. Do I have a second? I think Christine just second. Thank you, Christine. Okay, so today we're going to actually spend some time listening to our colleagues from ADS around disability determination. So I believe I see Robert, you are on. And is there another colleague of yours, Robert?
Not yet. And just to clarify, I'm Jessica Cornum from BRS ADS. For those of you, I'm fairly new here. For those who you probably all know that Kathy Marcioni retired, so I'm not going to say I'm going to try to fill those shoes, but a participant on the council now. The folks from Disability Determination Services who are part of ADS were not available today, so they were hoping if there were questions that came up from the meeting, those could be written down and provided to them, and then hopefully they can have one of their staff join a future meeting, because it sounds like there were questions about that. What I invited Bob to come talk about is the benefits counseling program that's available to folks who are already on benefits, and who may be interested in working or going back to work, and the impact that that would have. So that's just a quick overview before I hand it over to Bob, but we only have one piece of it today. Our hope was to have both the disability determination side and the benefits counseling side, but we only have one piece today because of staff availability.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. That we appreciate that, because you're right. We did have a number of questions about that area, but this will be very, very helpful as well. And I appreciate you being able to come today and present to our group. So, what we're doing is basically reviewing any top priority areas and gathering more information about those priority areas. And this was definitely one of those areas. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you and you can present, and then we can certainly have time for questions at the end of that presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you and good afternoon again. Robert Adriani with the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, part of the Department of Aging and Disability Services. And within the BRS, there's a program known as the Connect to Work Project, which is our benefits counseling program. And I'm fortunate enough to oversee that program. And, given our current staffing levels, I'm currently wearing two hats in terms of overseeing the program as well as providing direct service to individuals and consumers. The benefits counseling program has been part of BRS for over 20 years, and I've been fortunate enough to be in it since its inception. We've gone through myriad changes and funding and organizations, through different grants and cooperative agreements to being part of the VR program, being part of a standalone program and kind of a hybrid and pretty much everything else in between. But fortunately, our administration has been very supportive and we're still intact and we're still here. That's just kind of a little bit of the boring background, but just to let you know, we're going to be here for a while, it looks like, thankfully. And what we do is all of our staff members have been certified and trained through the Social Security Administration and their training conduits as benefits counselors, or as they call community partner work incentive counselors. And really what all that fancy letters and titles mean is that we have been schooled and trained in the Social Security disability programs, Social Security disability insurance, and supplemental security income, and what applicable work incentives are available to individuals that are on each of those benefits. And as just mentioned, we work with anyone that is currently on a disability benefit from Social Security. We do not help someone become eligible. We have no part of the application and eligibility process for state or federal benefits, for that matter, for a couple of simple, straightforward purposes. One is we're in an agency that is about employment, not about getting on benefits, and the benefits counseling program is about what happens to benefits by working. So there would be some incongruence if we were, on one hand, helping people get on benefits, and we're trying to get them off benefits. So that's the basis. But we do get a lot of referrals because the title, benefits counselor, is a little bit misleading to the general public in that, they're a benefits counselor, they know all the different benefits, they can help. So there's no harm, no foul, but there's not much we can do. So someone that does get referred to us for how to get on a benefit kind of gets set up for a little bit of a failure. But having said that, we never hesitate to explain the process and tell them what to do. We just don't do it for them. We have information, we share it. So that's kind of the, it happens all the time. So it's like, oh well, got another one, this is what you have to do, and suggest maybe getting an advocate or family support, depending on the background. But before I get into a little bit about what we do, is we also partner with our state agencies. We do a lot of work with Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, Developmental Services. We have a direct liaison with Department of Social Services. We work a lot with the Community Rehabilitation Provider Network, a lot of our contract providers, et cetera. So we it's not just us. We're part of a cog on a wheel in providing services. And with that, as I mentioned, anyone that is currently on a disability benefit from Social Security that is looking to return to work, is working, or has a job offer would meet our eligibility criteria to receive services from us. One does not need to be a consumer or an individual affiliated with BRS to work with us. Just the fact that they're on a disability benefit from Social Security, we can provide benefits counseling services. So even though we're within BRS, we're kind of a standalone program within BRS. And naturally, we work extremely closely with BR, since we're all housed in the same office, the same administration, et cetera. So it's not so much a we they, it's kind of an us. And it's just our role is a little bit different. But to access us is pretty simple and straightforward. We do have a one-page referral form, which we call the benefits assessment checklist, and that identifies the individual, all their pertinent information, benefits, employment, and the basics that we need. And even if it's not 100% accurate or so, it's still a starting point for us, because with releases of information, we can verify people's benefits and then give them the specific information. And once we receive that, we do have to have a triage, because someone that is already working or has a job offer or is going to take a second job, pay raise, increase hours, et cetera, there can be more of an immediate impact to those benefits or a change to those benefits. We want to talk to that person first and sooner than later, or somebody that's in process of, seeking employment, applying, et cetera, we definitely want to talk to them. But, if we don't talk to them as soon as someone that's working, that's okay. They'll still get the information. And even someone that's early on in the process of just starting out, they're going to have questions about what's going to happen when I do start working. So of course we'll talk to them and we'll meet with them. And but again, not that they're not a priority, but there's less of a impact. So if they have to wait a little bit, we can it's not going to change anything for them. And we can meet in person, virtually, or by phone. I've been tracking it for almost 2 years, post-pandemic, and overwhelmingly, our appointments are by phone and virtual, with the preponderance being phone. Most folks are very content doing it that way and not coming into the office, for myriad reasons, which honestly is our national model with the programs we're part of, is to be in the community, not necessarily being in an office, to be able to provide services remotely. And I talk with colleagues and my counterparts in different regions, and it's the same thing. And you get states like New York or New Jersey, Massachusetts even, or even some of the states out west that are very large geographically. It doesn't make sense to have somebody travel 3 hours to an appointment, when you can do that by phone. If somebody can't get there, they're sick, or transportation, which is a huge issue for folks with disabilities. You haven't spent the day in the car doing nothing, kind of thing. So, not that we won't. And sometimes, depending on the family situations, it's best initially to meet with a group or with someone face to face, and then subsequent meetings can be done by phone or virtual. So it's all on the table, is what I'm trying to say. But when we do meet with the person, whether it's with a part of their support network or not, it varies. What we do is we look at their current benefits, their current employment situation, and then go through each of the applicable work incentives and rules with their benefit. So whether it's Social Security disability, we'll go through all of those work incentives. Medicare was the insurance that goes with that. We'll talk to them about Medicare and extended Medicare. If they're receiving a SNAP benefit, we'll talk about what happens to that benefit. And someone on SSI, likewise, there are different rules for SSI. When someone goes to work, they could have, Husky. We will talk about what safety nets are in place to maintaining Husky. And likewise with SNAP, or even cash benefits from the state. A lot of folks don't realize that they can be much better off by being employed versus just receiving a benefit. And that's the message that we try to convey and then demonstrate how. And when we're done meeting with the person, we summarize that meeting in a letter, which we call a summary and analysis. So they have something to take with them, a document to refer to, should they have further questions or something changes. They can kind of look at it and reference that document. Having said that, we're always available to meet with the person subsequent to the initial meetings. It's not a one and done. It's really a starting point. And if we don't know, we can't help. We can't explain it. And sometimes some of our individuals aren't the best historians in terms of where they're working, how long they've worked, and what they've done. And that's where the referring source or a family member really helps us provide the most accurate information for that person, so that they can make choices for themselves going down the road. So I realize I'm just kind of giving you a lot in a short time, and I hope it doesn't feel like a dump job, because I don't intend it to be. But it's, I can go on and on about this. But to me, the most important part is to know that we're here, how to access us, what we do, with whom and for whom, is really what I'm trying to convey. And if you have questions or more specifics, we have some time. So by all means, don't hesitate.
Are there questions?
I have,
afternoon benefits talks.
yeah, I have a,
Knowing everybody. It happens when I train the BRS staff. Sorry, Jess.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So what, if anything, are you guys doing to kind of prepare for the changes in the work rules that, you mentioned SNAP, and, there's some thought on,
Yeah,
how
good
that's going to
question.
specifically impact people with disabilities who may not be, um, keeping up with some of those requirements. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious how you guys are preparing for that.
That's an excellent question. And we try to keep abreast of everything that's going on in terms of rule changes and requirements so that we can provide that information to consumers as well. I mean, a lot of it is posted on Department of Social Services website. They've done, I think, a very good job in keeping that updated versus relying on media, outlets. And we'll present that. We will caution folks what they need to do or what the requirements are. But since we don't administer that benefit and determine eligibility for that, we have to stop short of going beyond that. But if they aren't compliant, we alert them that your benefit could stop if you're not compliant with the program rules, so that then they can then follow up with those questions, with DSS, as the program administrator. In terms of other rules, federally, like with Social Security, a lot of those rules are kind of mature. They've been in place for quite a while, but a lot will change in terms of dollar amounts, which are all based on cost of living adjustments, which usually we get alerted in October, November, around the start of the federal fiscal year, and then just incorporate those numbers, into our conversations.
Thank you.
Some of the questions that just came up before in our previous committee meetings, just to kind of share with you what prompted this desire to have a presentation, has really been around individuals that have not were on Social Security and receiving their benefits, and then they were dropped. And what are some of those reasons why people get dropped, and then how do they avoid that, and then how can we support them if that does happen to be the case?
Yeah, excellent. And we see this a lot, just in working with consumers. And I'm going to work backwards a little bit in the question and like how to avoid it. Hands down, when somebody is working, to report their earnings to Social Security every month. And if they're receiving any state administered benefit, to do that as well. They can do it in person at a local office. They can do it online. They can with Social Security. They can even do it with an app on their smartphones. So it's a little easier today to keep that requirement, because they are required to report every month. Now, what's adding to some of that confusion is Social Security has instituted new software and a program where they will now be able to garner the information of who's working and at what level. But I can tell you there's been a lot of problems with it. It hasn't been accurate. And an individual that's working and receiving a benefit has been notified that they don't have to report their earnings because Social Security knows. And we've been telling them, keep reporting it, because one of our regional contacts at Social Security is saying it's become quite a problem, because people are not reporting it. Then they're getting hit up with overpayments and situations like that. So at least for the time being, until the glitches can get out of a new program, if you're working with someone or know of someone, please encourage them to continue reporting their earnings. Benefits can stop for different reasons. As part of the policy with Social Security, they want to make sure everyone on a benefit continues to meet the medical definition of being disabled under their rules. And as such, they do what's called CDRs, a continuing disability review, and they can either do it for medical purposes or for work purposes. And the medical purposes happen periodically by policy. And if someone has improved medically to the point where they no longer meet the definition of being disabled under their program rules, then their benefit would be terminated for that reason. If somebody is working and they're earning what's called the substantial gainful activity to the point, which is what we sarcastically call the cash cliff, and at that level, Social Security will say, well, your work is considered substantial and your benefit is going to stop for that purpose. When that happens, it depends what happens in timelines in terms of how long they've been earning at the substantial gainful activity amount or not, because there are programs or there's rules in Social Security that if one stops working or earns less than the substantial gainful activity amount, their benefit can be restarted again. But again, it's all predicated on the person reporting their earnings or making sure Social Security has that information. After a certain period of time, their benefit will terminate, and and of course, monthly payments stop. They can have benefits reinstated without having to reapply. And in some cases, it's been over 5 years from when someone's benefit is terminated, then they would need to reapply. Sometimes benefits stop because people haven't returned information regarding a medical review. And then Social Security says, okay, we don't have the information, and they stop it. So there are different reasons. And some consumers, they don't understand it, or they don't have necessarily the support network to help them understand it, and they get a little hesitant and they just don't do anything. And then it becomes a real debacle from there. And nationwide, the appellate services for people on Social Security is sparse. Talking to some of my colleagues and counter folks in different states, they find the same thing. There's not a lot of legal representation for somebody in that situation, and we can explain certain things, but we can't engage in any type of appellate process because of our arrangements with Social Security. It would be considered an adversarial relationship. And we can provide information, and we can guide, but we can't do anything more than that. And frankly, the appellate process is a specialty in and of itself, very detailed on how best to make the appeal, how to file it, what information to provide. Often, attorneys with specific backgrounds in disability law are used. It's a tough process. It's unfortunate.
And that's another area that has come up is, as you said, some individuals, like, this is a challenging process and they're already facing challenges in managing what they have to manage. And, what kind of supports and advocacy might be out there to help them navigate, especially if they don't have a support system that can act on their behalf.
Very true. And then it becomes a disincentive to work. And then if someone gets close and doesn't have the information, they say, oh, I'm not going to work, and it's out of anxiety and fear, which you don't blame someone, but you just hate to see somebody give up a job, especially when you see if they enjoy it, they're getting money, they have routine, social activity, all the things, we get from work. And then, it always pulls at you.
Bob, can you hit on the what happens when a young person who's on SSI turns 18? What that process is when do they have to reapply as an individual?
Okay. SSI, just if you know this, stop me, please. Is a disability benefit as well as having a financial needs associated with it. So one needs to meet the definition of being disabled under Social Security rules and have a financial need. But someone under age 18, there's a different standard or a different definition of being disabled. And if they're on SSI and then becoming age 18, they need to be redetermined eligible as an adult. And the adult definition of disability requirements is more stringent than that of a non-adult. And sometimes people that are at age 17, are going into or becoming age 18, don't meet the adult definition of being disabled, and their benefit stops because of that. We see that more with transition age youth. We don't see a lot of it, but we do see it.
Can you just expand on that a little bit more? Like, what is it that differs in the pre-18 definition and the adult definition?
The adult definition focuses more with how severe the diagnosis is, how much, what limitations are, and what the opportunity is or prospective improvement, if any, in their disabling condition is. When Social Security awards a benefit, they always look at medical improvement, expected, not expected, etc. And all that lines up. And when someone's 18, that standard is less. Now, there are some obvious situations, people with, developmental disabilities and intellectual disabilities aren't going to change at age 18, but there are others that may have more, might be more physical in nature, or might be just the way it's been documented, they could improve. And then at age 18, there's not enough documentation to meet that definition, but it's just more stringent, in terms of major life areas.
Now, could that happen with somebody with for somebody specifically with an autism diagnosis?
It could.
So they could be on SSI up to 18, and then under the adult determination be determined that they do not have a disability. And a follow-up question. Okay,
Right.
and a follow-up question. If that did happen, we know autism is still a lifelong disability, and they would maintain that diagnosis through their lifetime. Would that disqualify them for employment services under BRS? Because they didn't have that disability determination?
It shouldn't be. It's not required that someone be on Social Security for VR services.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for you, Jess, but I still wear my VR hat at
No,
times.
that's you're accurate. I mean, I know you know this stuff, this side of it too, but no, it's helpful to us in terms of determining someone eligible for our services if they've already been determined eligible for SSI or SSDI, because somebody's already sort of looked at, how does their disability impact them in some ways that's going to make work harder for them. So it makes it easier, but people are not disqualified because they're not on benefits. They're separate things. We would gather other information, obviously, with a release sign that lets us look at how someone's disability will impact them and make employment more of a challenge, or what are the things we have to help them sort of work around, because that's what our services are based on. What gets in the way, and then what can we do to help work around those things, accommodate them. It's helpful, but it's not required for somebody to be on benefits.
So in thinking through the questions, these are things I absolutely would bring up with disability determination, like my friends and colleagues over there, when you get to meet with them, because they'll have more specific information on that, on hows and whys, and on that process.
And the reason I asked Bob to mention that, the SSI turning 18 pieces, it goes along with kind of the paperwork. Like, sometimes parents obviously are, when someone's getting ready to exit the school system, it can get there. It's a lot for parents to, take into consideration, and planning and transition planning and all of that. So sometimes that kind of falls off the radar, that there has to be a reapplication in order for benefits to potentially continue. So it kind of goes back to what Bob was saying about, you know, paperwork and the process and those kinds of things. And one recommendation I would have, if someone is really struggling with, you know, the paperwork side of things, that a call to an independent living center in someone's geographic area may be a helpful thing. They can sometimes, and their capacity is limited, but sometimes they can help with those kinds of things, or at least clarify the process that someone needs to, the steps somebody needs to go through.
And do you know, is that information being provided at the transition planning to parents about having access to the SILs for that transition planning and that peer support?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can
Okay.
touch base with the folks from BRS who attend PPTs and are part of those meetings more regularly than I am. And I can touch base with you after I verify that.
Thank you. I know that there's a lot of requirements for what kind of information is provided, you know, in that transition process. So I was just curious if that was also part of it.
I will find out.
Thank you.
It might be a question for, I'm going to put him on the spot, but that might be a question for Brian in terms of what's required. But I will say that anecdotally, I think there's a high degree of variability in terms of what districts offer to families as their students prepare to transition out. That's just my anecdotal experience. But I don't know what's required. That's Brian's wheelhouse.
Yeah, and I know, and that's why I said I prefaced it by saying I know there's a lot of things that have to be provided during that time, and it's overwhelming for parents in general. But just was curious if that was, um, and each, you're right, each district handles things kind of differently. Some of those messages are lost in translation. Yes, Brian.
Sorry, Tara and Kari, could you just repeat the ask? Were you speaking about the school district's responsibilities as students are exiting special education from public schools?
Well, just transition planning in general. So even if, because as we know, just because somebody has an autism diagnosis doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be part of the special education program. So for their transition planning, are they getting, you know, information for, I believe BRS is still involved in, you know, that kind of redetermination information. Is that provided at transition for SSI?
Okay. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to find out. I'm thinking about the way that I can be most helpful with that question around the requirements, because related to secondary transition, the school district's responsibilities formally kick off the year the student turns 14 with their planning and placement team. And so there are previous and new requirements around secondary transition. What we often point to is the Secondary Transition Bill of Rights for families and students, which summarizes all of those requirements and then has direct links to the pertinent information. So that's sort of the one-stop shop, if you will, for families. That's actually required for school districts to, you know, hand to the parent, the adult student. And we have brand new uh, resources or recent resources related to um, decision making and all of those different things, which we've collaborated with our partner agencies on. And those direct links are also included in the Transition Bill of Rights. And then our training, every educator, whether or not they work with students who are of transition age, are required to access this training. So each school district has a secondary transition coordinator. We maintain a list of the transition coordinators are required to be trained and access that training. And then all educators who work with that age population have training, para educators, and then all educators. So there's quite a bit recently that we've been working on with our agency, um, our sister agencies, if you will. I'm not sure if I'm answering exactly.
No, that's helpful because
Yeah,
I just pulled it up too, so I dropped it in the chat so that we could see
perfect.
and BRS said that they would follow up on that too to see
Yeah,
what information is provided. I know you have links to all of the other like BRS and ADS and all the
yeah,
other agencies as well where people can find information.
yeah.
So
It's definitely a time frame though. Like it is, a confusing process. Like most of the legislative language talks about simplified language, plain language. And so that was our effort related to the decision-making guidance around that, for students who are turning 18 or the year before. But yeah, we still hear, like in our state advisory council meetings for special education, we still hear parents who are not familiar with this document, and that's surprising. But it's not, I don't think, an isolated incident. It seems for some reason to be happening. So many districts post the Transition Bill of Rights in the parent portal with our
mm,
Connecticut Special Education Data System so that all parents have access to it. That's what we've been recommending to districts as well. But yeah, we whenever we can, we try to point to that doc and make sure families are aware.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? So there were lingering questions, but I know that we don't have the right people here today to help us. But there were a lot of questions around that eligibility determination, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you again so that we have the chance to really talk through those pieces.
And I would just add too, if there's anything as you guys are doing the work that you feel um, or see that there's a gap, specifically related to autism, or there's, any kind of need for, additional training or collaboration, please feel free to reach out to us as a connection to help maybe fill some of those gaps as well.
And we'll
Thank you.
follow up with disability determination to see when they can come, what some of the general questions are, but just to explain sort of the process that they go through once someone has applied. So if anyone has specific questions, I don't know, Tara, I don't want to volunteer you, but just to sort of gather a list of questions, I'm happy to help with that.
Absolutely. I think, doing that would be great. I can send something out to everybody to, put questions in that they may have. And as we work towards getting additional time with them, we could send those in advance to the meeting.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time to be able to help us.
My
And
pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
very informative. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Bob.
you.
Right, welcome. Bye.
Bye. So at this point in the meeting, we do normally have an opportunity to discuss any other new policy suggestions. Tara, I'm just confirming we haven't had any submissions as of late, correct? Okay. Um, just on the docket of things that we've been talking about, certainly working towards providing behavioral services for life and hoping to catch Medicaid up with the change in the law that had recently occurred to allow private insurance access for those who are on private insurance to behavioral services till age 26. So that is still on the docket of things that we're thinking and talking about. In addition to that, certainly increases for rates for providers. That has been a hot topic for a while to try and increase the likelihood of us being able to have providers for our individuals on the spectrum. And one more is escaping me. Is the waiver, the wait list? Am I correct on that, Tara?
And workforce, like
And workforce.
looking at how to, increase training, autism specific training and workforce
Specifically
education. Yeah.
for mental health providers as well, so that they have that specialty in being able to work with those who have a comorbidity of some mental health and on the spectrum. Are there any other areas for policy suggestions or questions around the current legislation?
I can just do a brief legislative update. It's related to autism. We had written in support of Senate Bill 18, which was to increase rates, and that did not pass out of committee. So that's not going to happen right in this session. There is still some other bills that would um that are related to autism, but I like some of them are not like related to our goals. But if, for example, there's one for respite for the autism waiver, but we already provide that service. So trying to get some additional information on the intent behind that for respite services. And but other than that, there's some other, general language out for nonprofits and rate adjustments. But it's not specific to, there's nothing out there that's specific to the autism waiver in general. So appropriations did release their initial budget, and that is on the website. You can access that through the appropriations committee. You can see what they have decided to fund. That is different from what the governor has proposed. And they have a meeting this afternoon with multiple bills on there. There's a lot of human services bills that are out there that could have an indirect impact to autism, like increasing Husky C asset limits and some other things like that. But so just you can access that all on the CGA website.
Thank you, Tara. Any other questions or consideration that you'd like to bring up at this point?
And just a reminder, it's not a budget year, but there's a lot of things that are coming out that have price tags attached to them. So not sure what's going to make it out of committee, and there's still going to be some processes here. So any questions, if you need help finding any of the information, feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to show you.
Okay, so on that note, we will end a little bit early then, given that there aren't any further questions. And we will work on follow-up to have someone come from ADS around those eligibility requirements.
Or
Thank
Social
you.
Security.
Or
'Cause
Social
yeah,
Security.
Social Security.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. And I think for the next meeting, I will have to look back, Kim, and we can touch base offline for what our topic. We had a couple laid out, but
We did,
okay.
pretty much related to the mental health and providers. So those have been really the top ones.
Okay. There's only a few more weeks left of session, so we can continue the good work and be organized for 27.
Yes, that's the goal. In the meantime, if you have any questions or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to Tara or myself. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Nice to see
Yeah.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.